Hi, everybody. Welcome to our live stream. We're in the Voice of Vashon studio. I have Aimee Cartier in the studio today. We're going to be talking about intuition, getting answers, using your intuition to discover your best life, and a little bit probably about being an empath. Welcome. Okay, we're getting ready to start our program. So let me press go and we'll get started. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Hello and good morning. This is Voice of Vashon, KVSH 101.9 FM. Welcome to Raise the Vibe. I'm your host, Liz Peterson, an intuitive healer at Liz's Healing Touch here on Vashon Island. Today I have Aimee Cartier as my guest, and we'll be discussing intuition, being an empath, and how to use your intuition to create a better life. Aimee is a psychic guide who specializes in helping her clients discern what choices are in their highest and best interest so that they have the information they need to act on and align with their own highest good. She is known for her clear, accurate, and compassionate insight and her attention to practical details. She is also the founder of Intuition University and Empath Intuition University. In either private or group programs, she works with those who are ready to understand, enhance, trust, and rely upon their own innate intuitive skills and to experience the empowerment and flourishing that follows. She is the author of the book, Getting Answers, Using Your Intuition to Discover Your Best Life. More about Aimee can be found at spreadingblessings.com. Hi, Aimee. Welcome to the show.
So exciting to be here.
So excited to have you. I've done one of your workshops, and it was fantastic. And what others may not know is that you are a psychic. That's how you got your start. Could you explain a little bit about that to everybody?
About my abilities
Yes.
Or my readings?
Your abilities.
When
did you first realize you were psychic?
I had some prominent memories in my 30s, or actually I was either 29 or 30. I mean, I think the short answer is I'm just built like this. But during that period of my life, they're really strong, the things that happen. And generally it would be like somebody would be talking to me, usually friends, telling me about things that are going on. And while they were talking, I would just get images of things that were coming or understand. Sometimes my most prominent memory is with a guy friend of mine who was talking to me about his girlfriend, and they were having troubles at the time, and he was really worried about it. And I could just tell that his worry was just BS, that obviously they were having a tumultuous time, but that the relationship was solid, and I could see out for quite a while that they were good. And now I follow them. They live on the other side of the country, so I follow them on Instagram, and I see the pictures of their kids and things. So that's one of the prominent memories for me, where I was like, it's happened to me my whole life, where I just have insight and I can see things about what people are telling me about that may not be obvious to them, but
right.
That's one of the prominent memories.
Wonderful. So how did you go from that to actually being a psychic?
Yeah, good question. Around that time, it was a journey for me. It definitely wasn't an overnight thing for sure. But around that time, a book, it feels like it kind of came into my hands, although of course I reached on the shelf and got it, but it had this feeling of like it kind of jumped out at me. And I was reading the introduction, and it was a book by a world-renowned psychic called Sonia Choquette, and it was called Psychic Pathway. And I was just reading the introduction, and I was like, oh my gosh, this woman sees things like I do. She sees the world like I do. Things happen for her like they do for me. And I kind of like glanced to the front of the book, and I'm like, she's a psychic. And it was the first time that I understood this is a profession. People who are built like me do this in service of others, and it's something that they can It's literally a profession. So that was my first insight into connecting how I was built into it being something that I would do professionally. And then it was actually, still it's kind of weird. I have a college degree. It's obviously not in psychic skills. I have other things that I do. So it's kind of a big leap to jump into being like, oh, I'm psychic.
Right.
And so it was around a year or so later, I was getting the very clear signs that I needed to start to do readings, but still it's kind of weird.
What types of signs were showing up for you?
It was mostly internal knowing. Like, I can't think of any specific signs at this. I mean, that was about 15 years ago. So I don't really remember other than just knowing, oh, I need to do this. This is like what I do.
Okay, I see.
And I was taking a class with this woman, Sonia Choquette. It was actually about chakras and balancing and things. And during the class, she was like, why aren't you doing readings? And
interesting.
Her saying that to me out loud was just sort of the kick in the pants I needed to be like, okay, I don't know why, because I'm scared. It's weird. I don't know. So, but then from there, as soon as she said that, I was like, yes, I need to follow this knowing. And right. I was living on Vashon still at that time, and I went to Pike's Place Market downtown, and there's a bookshop there called Eco Elements right around there, and they have psychics on staff. So I just went in there and saw if they needed anything. She asked me to give her a reading on the spot, and then she hired me on the spot. So that was the start for me of doing it as a profession there. And then I used to also read at East West Books before I had kids, and now I'm mostly at home.
You work with East West Books now, don't you?
I do. I do a regular monthly program there for empaths called Understanding Your Empathic Ability. It's every second Tuesday of the month there.
Nice.
Yes.
And you also have Intuition University. So what is intuition?
Yeah, intuition in general.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's a great question, because it is confusing for people. It's multifaceted, and a lot of times, for me, it looks like it can be a combination of several things, but it's very subtle. I like to say it's where impulse meets knowing. So it's usually a very subtle experience for people. It can be your highest self speaking to you. It can be something, your guides, or everybody has ethereal guides. It can be your guides speaking to you, giving you advice on what would be the best course. It can also be, whatever the highest source is that however you connect with it, universe or God or whatever you're speaking to. But that's kind of where it comes from, or what I believe it is, what it feels like it is to me. And then, the way it works in each person's body is entirely different. Some people see things, some people feel things, some people know things or hear things, or you just get an insight of, oh, I need to do this, or this is happening, or etc.
Okay, so this is your psychic ability. So how did you go from using your psychic ability and doing readings to, hey, I need to teach intuition to other people?
Oh, good question. Yeah. So what I just described, I feel is intuition in general,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily the specifics of mine, but
okay.
So I've been doing readings for a while, like over a decade. I don't remember exactly how. And it was one of my clients actually who inspired it. She was like, I always feel super connected to my own highest good when you and I are in conversation, and afterward, I really feel connected to that part of myself. But how do I do this months later? Like when I'm not in conversation with you, how do I figure out how to do this myself? And the combination of having done reading so long and really seeing that it sounds cliche, but it's really true. We are all totally unique. And that also includes how our intuitive or psychic skills come to us. To me, the word is interchangeable. So I was like, oh, good question. And I can absolutely teach people the things that I do to keep mine in hyper good condition. And also I wanted to create a program that was specific for people, so that it was allowing them to understand and enhance their own unique traits and move forward with them.
Oh, okay.
Essentially, yeah.
So what parts of intuition can benefit people?
Everything, really.
Could you give some examples?
Think of parts of intuition. So I'm not sure exactly what you mean, like following.
So with learning their intuition and where it comes from, like how would that benefit somebody, like teaching them how to listen or see or?
Yeah, totally. Okay. Now I understand you. I really feel like intuition, it's sometimes called the sixth sense. And I feel like it's a skill everybody has. It's something that everybody has. And it's literally just, one beyond the first five, nose, smell, things like that. And I really feel like it's designed to help give you the information that's one beyond your first five senses, and that is guiding you towards your own success and flourishing. So it's not information that you might be able to get by yourself, or just using your nose or your ears, but it's literally designed to help you get the information that will allow you to flourish and to take the path your soul intended.
Okay. And how do we listen to our intuition?
Well, generally, I mean, I found that people have impulses. They understand, they get intuitive information in whatever way it comes to them. So it's not, I guess the listening piece also implies action for me.
Okay.
It's like you sometimes but then you don't do it. And then you're like, oh, I wish I would have done this because now this happened,
right,
etc. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's not so much the listening, but it's the acting on it that seems like the trouble for people, or it's something that's kind of unknown and can be scary. And a lot of times, or I feel like one of the reasons is because it doesn't actually, you don't always know why. When you get the impulse, oh, I need to go here, or I need to do this, you don't always know, or I need to stop doing this, for example. That's oftentimes scary for people. You don't always know exactly why. And you most of the time don't know until you do that thing to follow
Right.
through on it. So I feel like the listening is just paying attention to what knowing you have, what feelings that you have inside, what are your instincts, and it's the following through on it that's the important part, because you oftentimes don't really know why until you do that thing.
Right. And you had mentioned fear. So how do we push past that fear?
Yeah, really good question, because fear, and I have a whole chapter in my book on it. It's called Fear Transformed. Because fear is real. I mean, it happens to everybody, and it's going to happen probably the rest of your life. It's a very natural human experience. So I like to say, fear is not the problem. The problem is when you let it immobilize you or paralyze you from doing what you need to do. So there's a lot of techniques that you can do, but they're all kinds of, essentially, what I usually advise is just do the thing you must, and then see what happens. Your experience will show you that it's not as scary as you think, actually, and that usually, especially if you're following your intuition, really good things happen because of it, and that your mind can't necessarily see at the moment. So fear is a really natural emotion that comes up, and it doesn't actually mean that something is scary. For me, it really means you're about to do something you've never done before. You're entering into the unknown in some way. It's like a bodily alert system is how it feels to me. So it's your body and being's way of telling you, pay attention. This is something you haven't done before. Of course, your mind can take it all kinds of places of, well, what if this happens? And what's gonna, this and this and that. But it's really your body and being's way of telling you you're about to enter the unknown.
Okay. In getting answers, you outlined 4 simple steps, to getting answers. What are those?
Yeah. The first one is what I call align with the highest. So you don't want answers just from anywhere. That's why you want answers that are the best for you and in line with your own highest good. So the stuff that I call align the highest is really, it can be as simple as stating an intention, like I only receive answers that are in my own highest good. Or it can be, you can use it in depending on who you ask. So you can say highest self, for example, or universe, or God, or whatever is the word that you connect with, the highest and most benevolent source. So that's the first step. You always want to make sure who you're asking, not just like anybody, Joe Schmo, etc., your neighbor, your mom, etc. They may have their own opinions, but they may or may not be in alignment with what is in your highest good. So that's the first step, align with the highest good, either by intention or stating who you're asking.
Good advice.
Yeah. And I advise doing that with anything. I mean, I do that. It's the first integral step in anything I do. The second step is ask the question. These steps are all super simple, by the way. And I find actually most intuitive things are, people want to make it complicated, or mysterious or etc. But it's actually very simple and pretty straightforward. So ask the question. There's a really big difference between like hemming and hawing about how you don't really like your job or you wish you had better benefits or something like that, than making into a question statement where you're like, how can I get a job with benefits? How can I get a job I love with benefits? Question mark. When you put it into a question phrase, you give the universe a signal. I want this information. This information is important to me. It's a completely different stance than just, this really sucks. I wish I had a better job, or my benefits aren't good, or the standing around talking about it is totally different than literally phrasing it into a question. So whatever it is you're wanting to know, what is the best school for my child? Question mark. That's, something I've had in my life, and I've seen other parents do the same thing. It can be anything, literally. You just simply phrase your conundrum into a form of a question.
I see.
Yeah.
And then, go ahead. There are a couple more steps.
Yeah. So the next one is receive answers. That's step number 3. And I always like to point out that it's not ask question, receive answers. That's not the same step. It's ask the question in itself, and then the next step is receive answers. And those come from anywhere. You can be standing, the universe has amazing ways of speaking to you. You can get them from literally standing in the grocery store and overhearing a conversation will be precisely information that you need about something you're doing. It can be, there's so many examples. You can be a song in the morning. Oftentimes mine come through songs. And so, like, I'll wake up singing a song I haven't heard in like 10 years. And
I did that just the other day.
What are the words? It's a cue for me, something like that. They can literally come from anywhere. A conversation that you have. I've seen signs and bumper stickers. I had a client once who was like, I get all mine through the mail. Just like the things that were written on envelopes. I don't know exactly how it worked for her, but like that was the way that she commonly did. So sometimes there's little patterns in how it works for you, but literally the answers can come from anywhere. You just have to, now you're just in the mode of paying attention. And they will repeat, especially if it's important to you. You'll keep getting the same answer in several ways. So if you're not ready to do the thing, especially if it's important, the answer will repeat itself. Okay. Sure. So that's the 3rd step.
Okay.
And then the 4th step is act. And nobody can make you do this. It's a very internal statement. You have to be the one to do whatever it is that one good example that I think I talk about in my book is moving out of my house. At one time I lived at this lovely place on Beale Road on Vashon, which I loved. And my roommate left and I really did not want to leave. So I was doing everything to find a roommate, see if I could do it. And it just wasn't working. Anyway, I got several different signs that I really needed to move out of that house. So, however, the moving out required my action. I actually needed to do it. And what happened was I ended up moving to someplace else. I had like hardly any rent compared to what I did before. And I had the time to write my book. I didn't have to work as much and do all these things. So it's the kind of example that happens once you act. Sometimes it's like, I really didn't want to leave that house, but once I knew this is the best thing, this is in alignment with my highest good, you have to do the thing. And then you find out, then you get the goods. You get the wonderful things that happen when you do act on your intuition and get to understand what's going on.
Gosh, that's all really good information and good to know. You had mentioned asking the questions. So how do we know what questions to ask and how to ask them?
Good question. Yeah, and that is sometimes troublesome for people, I find. So I usually start by, and I have a chapter on this called Getting to the Heart of What You Want to Know in my book. I usually start by identifying, it is kind of a method of self-inquiry. Like you identify what's going on that I don't want right now. Like sometimes you're like, just using the job with health benefits. I don't like that I don't like my salary, or I don't like that I don't get health benefits, etc. Kind of identify that particular thing. And you can, it's a definitely, I'm going to glance at the questions I have here, but you're sort of asking yourself, what do I want right now? What do I want right now that I don't have and I don't know how to get? Because that's the real question. If you know how to get it, then just do it.
Right.
So
yeah, it really is when we're questioning ourselves, is this the right choice or not? Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So these are, what do I want to change in my life? What do I believe would make my life better? What do I want or need right now? it's a matter of starting to ask yourself those kind of questions that help you understand, what is it that I'm wanting to know right now? What is it? A really good example I had when I first started teaching this was one of my clients said, I want a job. I want a job at the university so I can keep my dance studio. She was an owner of a dance studio and she needed the influx in income. A university job is how she had done it in the past. But it's not, when I'm listening to her, that's actually not her question. What she wants is to keep her dance studio. What she wants is a flourishing dance studio that she doesn't have to worry about how is she going to pay the rent on this because, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Not the university job. The university job is just one way that her mind stopped doing it. So when you start to do a little bit of self-inquiry, you start to realize, the university job, yes or no, could come in her example, but what she really wants is to be able to keep her dance studio, be able to dance there, be able to, obviously it wasn't her main profession, so she wanted to do it, be able to keep doing it on the side with ease and grace. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Let's see. What about doubt? You talk about reasons we end up not trusting it. What are some of those?
Good question also. I found in noticing my own patterns and then also in working with students that generally people have specifics that come up for them. Like mine is like frantic mind. It will tell me like, you better, if you don't do this, this isn't going to work out, or you better do this right now. Like when I'm experiencing some kind of doubt, or it's not quite doubt, but it's like when it seems like I guess it's like poor advice like people's minds will come up with certain things that they do where like mine is the frantic mind, like you better get this done tonight or else it's not going to work out the way you think, or etc. like that. So it looks different for different people. What some of my clients and students have come up with like self-judgment, like, oh, I shouldn't do that. It's not a good idea, or worry of other people's judgment. What are people going to say? What if I do this? How is it going to affect these people? Different kinds of things. So the actuality of it in your mind looks varied from people to people, but it comes up in it comes up because sometimes these voices, your intuition voice is subtle. It's not necessarily linear. So when you think about the question, you might not get that answer right then. So people tend to put aside or doubt the information that they're getting because, it didn't come with a big sign, or it doesn't have, it's not in typeface or something like that. So, so people tend to doubt things a lot of times for those reasons, or it's moving them into the unknown, and their brain is like, well, what could happen? I'm not sure. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and that's the fear space again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So why are all those reasons we come up with nonsense?
I don't know why, but I can tell you why. What happens and what it feels like to me happens in the brain. Okay. It feels to me that it's the brain's job to think of all the things. It's like that's what it does. You say, oh, I'm gonna start a new class, or I'm gonna move across the country, or I'm gonna have a baby, or whatever it is that you're gonna do. Your mind's job is to come up with, well, what of these things, what could happen, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what it does. But it doesn't mean that the information that you got is not true or real for you. But it feels like, to me, it's like the mind doing its job. That's I'm repeating myself, but that's what it does. It literally comes up with all the alternatives. You don't have to believe them. You just, but that's what it does. So when I'm in a situation where I'm doing something that I know inside I need to do, and fear is coming up, I just literally am like, thanks for coming. Yes, I see that, and I'm going to continue on my way. And a lot of times I feel my experience is that fear is like smoke. It's like you think it's this big thing, and then you walk through it and it's gone. It's completely dissipated. You do the thing and suddenly the fear's not there, and neither is the smoke. You've walked right through it. But it can take you over in the moment for sure. But once you kind of move through and do the thing, then it basically dissipates because it sees, oh my gosh, I'm not going to die if I do this, and I'm still okay, and there's still money in my bank account, or whatever it is, that things that people commonly worry about.
Right. What has intuition guided you to?
So many things, like my whole life, really. Since I was in my early 30s, I've allowed it to guide every single thing. It's how I got to this island. Um, it's it's how I got to this island. Let me kind of back up a little bit of the details. So I knew I needed to move. I was ready to move. I didn't even know where I was coming. I just knew I was coming west because I'd lived in Oregon before, and this is my place in terms of climate, everything. So I literally allowed it to get me in my car and pack a few things, like, I didn't pack all my belongings and drive. And it was literally moment to moment how it guided me in the end to Vashon Island.
Yeah.
I first arrived, my first stop was Colorado, and several friends were like, you should go to Port Townsend. And 3 people said it in a row. So I was like, all right, I'll go to Port Townsend. I don't know what's there.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And it was amazing. And I have dear heart friends there, but it wasn't my place. So it was a girlfriend of mine in Port Townsend who was like, the conversation to me was like, I mean, not at the moment, but it was like, blah, 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 Vashon, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, what is Vashon? And she told me, oh, it's an island. And I was like, I need to go there. And then same sort of things happened when I arrived. And this was a long time ago, but when I arrived here, I remember driving through town and seeing Bishops. It was Bishops at the time, Red Bike now, being like, oh, I need to go there this evening. So I went, and somebody there was like, actually walked in the door, and I was like, I don't know, maybe isn't my scene. And so I walked out the back door, and somebody followed me. I mean, I've never seen before or since. And he was like, I think you left too soon. Come back in. I'll buy you a drink, and I'm not trying to pick you up. And I was like, okay, that's pretty clear. So he came back in, bought me a beer, and then he literally sat me down with these 2 women and was like, this is Aimee. She's thinking about moving here. Maybe she can join you. 2 women. And by the end of the evening, one of them was like, I need a house sitter at this time. It was right when my lease was up in Port Townsend, and things unfolded. So all of those things were literally step by step. I didn't know when I was going to Bishops that night, oh, I'm going to find a place to live right when I get here and a place to lay and store my things. I was just like, I need to go there. This is what I need to do. It's guided me to, I mean, I could give you so many examples, and some of them are very mundane. Like sometimes I'm cooking dinner for the family and I have an impulse, oh, I need to make more. I don't know why, but I just make more dinner. And then just before dinner, a friend stops by, and then I can say, hey, you guys want to join us for dinner? And we have a spontaneous evening with friends just because I listen to that inner voice.
Nice.
So do you want more examples?
Sure,
I could give you tons.
We would love to hear more examples.
Yeah. One of the other ones that I love is typing. It literally taught me how to type, and this was back in high school. But I remember when I saw that typing was available, I was like, I need to take that class. Like, I had no idea why. I had no sense of myself as a writer and author at that moment. I just understood, I need to know this. This is really vital for me. And it absolutely is. I use it all the time. And I can... I always reference my husband, who's a carpenter, who does not need to know how to type. And I can still, all I have to do is look at him typing things. And I think, like, that's how I could have been, like, one finger at a time. Had I not taken this class. But that was something that was absolutely vital to me. Moving across the country, like I said, a couple times. My husband, even, I can still remember the first time I met him, and I had no idea of dating him at the time, but I was like, wow, that man is the sunniest energy I've ever seen. And a couple, I don't know, it was a year or 2 later, and we were obviously friends by this point. One time he approached me, it was at the farmer's market, and he just like came up and put his arms around me, and just in greeting, and I was like, it felt like home to me. Like, I still remember the feeling of that happening.
That's
and
really sweet.
Yeah, it wasn't, I don't remember, I don't think it was probably a year or 2 before we started dating, but I already knew instinctually by the time that was on the table for like lots of signs where the universe was definitely trying to get us together. But it was absolutely all the different intuitive things that I knew as I went along, that this is my guy. This is my man.
What a gift.
Yeah, totally.
You created Intuition University. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. So my Intuition University it started as a private program, and I still do that, actually. So that is a high-end private program, really for people who, generally the people who come to me are ones who already know they have an intuition that is working for them, but they just are still having a hard time completely trusting it. and they know that it's good for them. They know that it leads them to one place, good places, but they want to like take the next step to really understand what their innate intuitive skills are and also enhance them and then use it to allow them to flourish. So that program is 6 months long, and it's 9 private sessions, and it's very dialed to the person, what their particular skill sits on, where they want their intuition working really optimally for them in their life, etc. And then I'm doing another one this fall. I also do a group program, Intuition University program, and that's really that's teaching all of the skills that I use to keep my intuition in high, in perfect form, essentially. And I also teach the things that I use to use it as more of a precision instrument instead of just like a random thing that happens to you. So that's what I do in the fall for anybody, and it's a group program. Usually mine are in the evenings from 6:30 to 8:30 Pacific Standard Time on some night, Monday or Wednesday.
Okay, and they can find that information on www.
My name, Aimee Cartier, or spreadingblessings.com is the same website, but
and you had mentioned and you had mentioned teaching people how to hone their gifts and skills. Could you explain what some of those might be?
Oh yeah, good question. Well, seer is one. Like I associate with the word seer. That's when you, like I had described earlier, when people are telling you things, you can see out into the future. You can see things that are coming, paths that are opening, and just sort of know what's coming down the line. Empathic is another one, and I have one class just for empaths because it's a very specific skill set that usually needs help managing. There's all kinds of different ones. It really works differently for each person. So I've had students who their intuition was really active in their art. They taught, they were art teachers, they were artists themselves, and their gifts were really, or their most prominent gifts, I should say, were really related to their art, and it was a form of connecting to the divine for them. And this woman is able to teach other people how to do that, and is really, really connected in that way. Some people, I like I call them like earth talkers, people like that. Some people are really connected via nature to their intuitive skills. Other people, there's so many nuanced ways that people's intuitive skills work for them. Being able to hear the truth, for example, is another skill that it's also related to empathic ability, but being able to know whether it's true or a lie, even you can just feel the resonance of, yes, that's true, or no, that's not. I'm trying to think of other students offhand that I've had, like, yeah, I'm drawing a blank on other students, but particularly aspects, but there's tons of different ways that it comes out. I consider them all different psychic skill sets within a broad range of what's possible.
Okay. All right. And then you also mentioned teaching how to take care of your intuitive self. Could you share some of those? Your daily practice, you had mentioned?
Oh, my daily practice? Yeah. Meditation is a big piece, and one that I mention to all my students of. I have a hard time believing there's either a psychic or a shaman or anything alive that doesn't understand the connection between meditation. It's just a recharge, really, for your body and being. So meditation is definitely a daily practice of mine. I have something that I teach my students that I call highest self hookup. It's just a way of really purposefully connecting with your own highest self, so that the conversation is open whenever you need it to be. Grounding is another one that I do regularly and teach my students, and the best way to ground, in my experience, is to exercise. So, there's all kinds of visualizations and things you can do, but
for those who don't know what grounding is, could you describe it?
Yeah, I would describe it as being connected to your body, being in your body, and understanding the connection that you have also with the planet we live on. Especially if you're very ethereal, information kind of feels like it comes from above. You can be flighty or lofty is another way that people describe it, but it's really important to be in your body while you're here. So it's one of the things I teach my students of, no matter how ethereal you are or how much ethereal information comes to you easily, you absolutely need to be in your body. It's your tool for being here and being effective while you're on Earth. So grounding is essentially being in your body, I guess is one of the ways I would describe it.
Okay. Any other ways?
To ground?
To take care of yourself.
Those are my main ones. Yeah, I teach empaths how to clear their energy and how to create a natural boundary for themselves. That's also a vital part of my daily routine and my regular routine.
Could you teach our listeners how to clear their energy?
I could, yeah. Okay, so the way that you would do it is all of the things that I teach are super simple. I mean, I say this all the time to my students, but that's the lovely thing. Clearing your energy is really easy. Usually I recommend that just when you're starting, that you shut your eyes, and you don't have to shut your eyes. You can do it anytime. But the way that I do it is basically 2 sentences, and you can kind of repeat after me in your mind. The first one is, I ask that anyone else's energy leave me now. And then I always just kind of recommend for people that you just notice what happens with that statement. Notice any sensations that you have. Notice any things that arise for you. And then the second sentence is, I ask that all of my own energy return to me now. So same thing, and just noticing what happens. Especially empathic people usually have very prominent noticing, but it doesn't happen all the time. So it depends on how much energy is around you of the other people's, and how much of your own you left other places working on other projects or thinking of other things.
Okay, so not only do we have to take away all those things that we've collected as sponges, but we also have to bring back pieces of ourselves that we've left behind.
Yeah. I find it's more effective to be all together in your body than to be, and it happens. I commonly give the examples of mothers, because it's not just exclusive to mothers, but sometimes something's going on, your kids are getting ready for school, you kind of like a part of you is over there helping that, and a part of you is in your body, so collecting yourself and bringing yourself, all of your own energy back together. It can even happen if you're working on different work projects, whether you're a mother or not, or you have different things going on.
Right.
When you collect your own energy back together, it kind of all comes together back in your body, and that's the most effective place.
Oh, I can feel that just talking about it. And you had mentioned empaths. You also have Empath Intuition University. What's the difference?
Yeah, good question. Well, my empath program works exclusively for empaths, and an empath is somebody who feels other people's business, emotions, sensations in their own skin as though it's happening to them. Mm-hmm. So they're not just like, oh, that person's having a bad day. They're like, I don't feel good all of a sudden. I suddenly feel this thing or the other. I'm sad, or, sometimes they don't know why, but they have the sensation as though it's them. They're the ones that's sad. There's the thing that's happening. So it's different than empathy, and I always like to clarify that, because empathy is something most people have.
Yeah, what's the difference between empathy and empath?
Just simply that you don't feel it in your own skin. You're like, oh, that person is having that experience. You can still understand what's happening for that person, and you can still understand, I guess is the best way, but you're not feeling it in your skin as though it's you happening. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So in my Empath Intuition University, I work literally exclusively with empaths, and I teach them how to manage their disability, because it can be totally overwhelming and debilitating for some people too, when you're at the whim and mercy of anything you come across. So it can be very overwhelming, and you can't control what you come across. So that's why I teach them the skills that are needed to manage their own ability in terms of clearing your energy, that one that we just talked about, creating natural boundaries, same other balancing skills that we talked about. And then I teach the nuances of like, what are the practical things about being empathic? What is it good for? And also how to address some of the common things. Like something commonly that happens to empaths is they feel like they need to solve all the problems because they feel all the problems. So whether it's they're typically the savers of people, or I call them over yes, like yes, because they feel there's a problem. They're like, okay, I'll do it. Which isn't necessarily a right relationship. An empath can feel everything, and it's not every person's responsibility to solve all the problems. So that's a common thing that happens with empaths. So we deal with things that are very common to empathic people, and even not being able to totally ascertain your needs, because generally it's you and everybody else in your psychic space. Once you start to clear, then you can start to address. You need to know, I feel like, to be effective, to do what you're here to do, you need to know you, and you need to have a beat on that. It's important. Every person is different, and we all have different reasons for being here. So that's kind of some of the things that I address in my Empath Intuition University.
Okay, so if a person is questioning if I am an empath, how would they figure that out?
Good question. On my website, I have a whole thing, 44 signs, and you can click on that and find. And if you are empathic, maybe not every single one is you, but the list will sing to you. You'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's totally me. That's totally me. So, and then I also have, if you do that, it's also followed up by an audio for antidotes to common empath challenges. So that's all included. If you want to know, you just download
Nice.
that.
Okay, yeah. So how would an empath differentiate between themselves and someone else? What are some skills around that?
It's difficult, and it requires, it's difficult / easy with a few techniques like clearing your energy and setting your boundaries, and then just also awareness. Once you start to be able to set a natural boundary around yourself, you start to be able to notice, one, what you feel like. So like, for example, I can tell when I'm picking up something outside of myself, because sometimes I just don't feel like myself, because I've spent a lot of time in my, with my own, being able to be connected to myself. So now I know what it feels like just to be Aimee. So when I suddenly feel weird or, feel off, I can tell like, oh, I don't feel like myself right now. I feel like me / other or etc.
Gotcha.
So remind me of your exact question again. Did I answer it?
Oh, how we differentiate between ourselves and others.
Oh, yeah. A lot of it just becomes paying attention and asking yourself some questions. Like one of the ones I use the most is, did anything just happen to me that would warrant this experience or sensation? If you can't identify something that just happened to you that made you suddenly sad or anxious or whatever it is you're feeling, then it's very likely you're picking up something from outside of yourself.
Great.
Yeah, so that's one of the ones I use the most.
What are some benefits of knowing you're an empath?
Well, it's actually lovely to be empathic once you're not totally overwhelmed by everything. You have deep feeling. I often feel like empaths have emotional superpower. That's our superpower. We really understand emotion in depth, and it's a really beautiful and lovely thing to be that way. And so it's lovely in that way. Empaths can set tones. It's in the same way that they pick up information. I liken them oftentimes to radio receivers. They pick up the information and they broadcast it also. But we're broadcasters. So if you're in a good way, if you're paying attention to yourself, caring for yourself, and making sure that you're not depleted, you're broadcasting a good vibe, and you can help other people. It's literally just a matter of putting your own energy in that place, and other people start to, it becomes obvious.
Okay. What can some of the challenges be?
Some of them we've touched on, like being overwhelmed. It's very common for empaths to be overwhelmed by crowds because they're downloading all the stuff, and that's uncomfortable. Some of the other one, like over guessing, over helping, that's another common one, because you feel it. You feel like, oh, I should do something, or it's my place to help, or it can be challenging for empaths to like I also said, understand who they are, especially if you're in even sometimes what you feel about something. If you're in the room with somebody who has a different opinion, and if their opinion is strong, suddenly you're like, oh, well, maybe that's the way, or maybe, oh, because you can see it or feel it from their perspective. So it can be hard sometimes for them to get in touch with what they feel about certain things, because they're simultaneously picking up everybody else's opinions and understandings at the same time.
I see. What's the number one tool you teach empaths?
Which I've already mentioned, clearing your energy and setting your own boundaries. Those are absolutely the best ones.
Right, yeah, those are good ones. I've heard you say empaths have an important role in uplifting humanity. Can you explain?
Yeah, similar to what we just talked about.
Okay.
I really feel like, especially, we've had a lot of dark times in the last few years, stuff going on that's really activated a lot of people, brought up a lot of things. And although I feel like some of them are very healing on other levels, empaths,
very much so.
Yeah. Empaths can still, especially during those times, we need light. We need goodness. We need examples of that, especially when we're hearing from all over the news, this terrible thing is happening, we should be afraid of this thing, etc., going on. In order to get through into the next places, I really feel like we still need examples of light and goodness and hope among us in order to grab onto that, to find the solutions. So I feel like empaths are particularly skilled at that, because as long as they can be maintaining their energy and they're not depleted, it's not causing them to plummet what they're coming around, they can choose to be a really good example of that going forward, which it's kind of like, I don't usually use like shedding light analogies. I feel like they're a little too ethereal. I'm more practical. But truly it can be like turning on a light in a room, and then many people can find their own ways forward and find their own solutions. But when things are going on terribly all around you, it's really hard to, it can be hard sometimes to get connected with that place where the solutions come from, that internal space. So that's one of the ways that they can help, just by literally making sure their own vibe is in a good space, and helping when they see it's appropriate for them.
Nice. Do you have any other programs?
Other than the ones we've mentioned, I have, I think our radio talk is after that.
Yeah, it's going to air after, but share it anyway, because you'll probably do it again, I'm guessing.
I will. Yeah, I have so I do the regularly at East West Books every second Tuesday for understanding empathic ability. And then I also, a couple times a year, do a full day workshop called Empath Tools. And I often do it in person, but this year I'm doing it virtually, because I've had so many people that can't meet me in person who want the information. So I have one coming up on May 19th, which will be done, but I'm sure I'll do another one again. So that's a full day workshop, literally just on everything you need to know to dial your empathic ability, so that you can manage it and get to the good parts of it. Then I do my Empath Intuition University, which is a 7-month program. Every other week we meet via conference call, so people come from everywhere. And the next one I have will be starting up in 2020 at the beginning of the year. And then I have the Intuition University group program that I'm going to do starting in the fall. And then obviously I still take some students for my private program as time goes on. Okay,
so you work on Vashon as well?
I do, yeah. Most of my work is remote, even my readings.
Oh, okay.
I mostly do all my work, my teaching, unless I'm doing events in person, on the phone, and my readings are on the phone as well. Except if you're on Vashon, you can come and see me in my studio if you want to do that. And I have Vashon clients that choose both. Some are like, I'll just call from their own home, wherever they are, a couple miles away, or some like to see me in person, so they come.
Great. Can you tell us about your readings?
Yeah, generally I do 30, 45-minute or hour sessions, and that's up to the client to decide. People usually know this is how much I have to talk about, so they're able to discern what would be best for them. And then, usually people come to me when they're at a crossroads. They can't quite see forward. They're not really sure what would be the best path, the best alternative, or they have some questions about, literally it can be anything from career to relationships to their own personal growth, about what would be best. And they're just, I mean, it's not always true. Sometimes people just come to say, what do you see? Or what do you want to say? But generally I find, and I advise people to get clear on what do they want to ask? What do they need clarity on before they come to me? Because you don't want to get into a session and then leave the session and then forget. You're like, oh, I wish I would have asked about this or that. So generally how it works is that's what happens. People come to me, they're like, I want to talk about these 4 things. And then I get them information. I'm really clear every session, everything that I do, really, about aligning with exactly what I talked about at the beginning, what I call aligning with the highest good. So I start every session by asking that whatever be revealed before my client's highest good, whoever that is. So that's the way that I set my radar to only receive that information. That's the only information that I want, one that will actually benefit them to know and that will enhance their highest good in their way.
Great. How can our listeners reach you?
Good question. They can reach me on my website, which is aimeecartier.com, or as I said, spreadingblessings.com. It's the same exact site. You can also, I'm on Instagram as Aimee Cartier. I'm on Facebook, same, my name. And I have a personal or a work page there as well, and you can contact me both ways. And then also you can always give a call and get on my schedule, and that's 206-567-0535.
Great. We have about 10 minutes left of our interview. Are there any stories that you can share with us about your journey?
In which way? What kind of things would you like to know?
Gosh, about your intuition, what it's led you to, maybe a little bit more about your empathic abilities and how you came to realize those.
Yeah. My empathic abilities, it was all kind of during it was about 14 or 15 years ago. I remember, I'm still really vivid. The memory is very vivid for me. I was walking up, it was like a lovely spring day, sunny. I was living in upstate New York at the time. And I walked up, I was walking up these stairs into a building, and I was literally ecstatic in my being. I just felt ecstatic is really the best way. That was my inner vibe. And I was just aware of that, just enjoying the beauty of the spring day, walking into lunch. And I got into the cafeteria where I was going, and it was one of those cafeterias where you serve yourself and there's a line on either side. So there was 2 people potentially serving themselves. And I was in there and I started serving myself, and suddenly I felt really frustrated. I felt like really irritable, uncomfortable in my own skin. I had this thought about a chapter, like I couldn't figure out how to finish a chapter of a book. And I think because the proximity in time, like it couldn't have been more than 30 seconds from my walking up these stairs, really aware of my own inner state, to suddenly feeling frustrated. I really think, and the contrast in the emotions, I think it was those 2 things that allowed me to realize what is going on. Something is going on. And I remember just walking away from getting the rest of my lunch and kind of taking a seat away from everyone else and literally just being like, what just happened to me? Because I knew where I had been and nothing had just happened to me. There's no reason why I'd be frustrated, and I wasn't even working on a book. So I literally had no chapter that I should be. The thought that I had was like irrelevant to me at that moment. And I glanced around the room and I saw the woman who had been on the other side, and she wasn't exactly even with me. And I hadn't even literally hadn't been paying attention to her at all. I was really just serving my food. And as soon as I saw her, I was like, that was her. I knew that she was writing a book. And I realized I just downloaded her business. I was literally just in proximity to her. I wasn't even paying attention to her. Wow. And it was such an impactful moment. That was the first thing I realized. And then it was like a succession of 3 big things that I felt. The next thought was, I have been doing this my whole life. And it's easy not to know when you're empathic because you feel it inside. You feel like it's you. So you're just like, oh, I'm frustrated right now or whatever. But like I said, because of the proximity and time of those 2 things, that's how I noticed. And then I was very clear, oh my gosh, I've literally been doing this my whole life. And then the next impactful thought for me was, who am I then? How can I even know who I am if I've literally been walking around my whole life downloading everybody else's feelings and thinking they were my own? And that for me was the start of my journey, dialing my own empathic ability. And I spent about the next 3 years just teaching myself how to live like this so that I didn't want to be downloading everybody else's stuff. I wanted to be in contact with me. I wanted to know what that felt like. And I wanted to be able to discern between when what I was feeling was mine or when it was somebody else's.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me was the start of the journey. And then, cut to many years later, I already had my Intuition University in place, and I was doing different speaking events, and it felt like empaths were coming out of the woodworks, like, how do I deal with this?
Yeah.
And that's why I ended up starting my Empath Intuition University. So I was like, I can teach you how. I know how to do this, and we can do this.
Okay, so how do you teach yourself to go from downloading everything when you walk into a room with someone to not picking up on it?
Yeah. Well, I started to figure out how to create a boundary around myself so that I was pulling from my own energy to create some kind of a bubble around me so that I had some kind of a barrier so that I wasn't just so porous every moment. And then part of my journey was the first year I was on it ended up to be the first year I was on Vashon, because this happened all before I came to Vashon. But I basically spent a year alone, and it's not really true because of course I was still at potlucks and I I went out in public, etc.
Right.
But like the bulk of my time was really alone, and just sort of investigating all the emotions that were inside of myself and all the different things that came up. So I basically spent like a year just kind of with my own emotions and really understanding what felt like me. And I was just really picky about what I did. I mean, I hardly even answered the phone. I called people back at my own time, but I was really, really inwardly focused on what does it feel like to be Aimee. And I don't think it's necessary for everyone to spend a year alone. And that's why I teach this to people, so that they don't feel like they have to do that in order to get connected. But for me, that piece was super pivotal, and I feel like I wouldn't even be teaching this today had I not done that and started to get really clear on what works for me. How do I do this so that I like people and I like being out in the world, and I don't want to be a hermit and hide away. So, so just sort of fine tuning and paying attention, what works for me. Like, how can I stay connected to myself when I'm in contact with other people?
Okay. I personally find that I actually pick up on things even when people aren't around.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, just to be clear, empathic ability you don't have to be in proximity to somebody. You don't have to be, it can be remote, for sure.
For sure. So then we're looking at the differentiation piece again, right? Differentiating between, okay, I wasn't feeling like this a second ago. This is new. So really getting to know yourself is the key.
Yeah. And also just becoming aware, like I said, one of the best questions, what just happened to me? There's all kinds of other ones. Do I normally act like this? Like around the election, a few days before this election in 2006, I remember standing in my kitchen and I was super scattered. I was doing literally the same thing I do every morning. I drop my kids off, I work out, I get the things that I like, a quart jar of water, and I bring it to my studio to where I work on our property. And I'm like standing in my kitchen and I couldn't remember, what do I do now? Like, what should I do? And I had to ask myself, like, do I normally act like that? Like, that's one of my questions. Like, am I just normally like this? And I'm like, no, I'm not normally scattered like this. And I certainly know what I bring into my studio every single day, or, every day that my kids are at school, every day that I work. So, do I normally act like this? Does this seem like me? You can pick up, like, one of my favorite examples from one of my students who is like, oh, that's why I always have so much more energy for hiking when I'm with my brother. It's like, does it seem like you? Are you interested in it? I do not like to cook. Like if I never cooked the rest of my life, I'd be like, woohoo. And I have a sister who loves to cook. I remember sitting with her and she's super excited. Oh, this sounds super. She's talking about these like highly complicated recipes. She's like, this sounds so fun. And I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds so fun. You know, as soon as I walk away, I'm like, I'm not getting those ingredients. Like I would never do that. It's not me. It doesn't seem like me. I'm just picking up her joy and enthusiasm.
That's good information to really know about, because we could be happy and cheerful and walk into a room where someone's low and all of a sudden we're dropping down. So in those circumstances, you know, when all of a sudden we're feeling bad, do you have any advice?
Clear your energy. And, you know, create a I call it egg actually for my students, but essentially you want to just create some kind of a boundary around yourself so that you're not so porous, you're not picking up other people's stuff. But I like what you bring up, because the other thing that seems like for empathic people, they'll be like, I always pick up negative energy, and I always have to say it's not true that you only pick up negative energy. It's just that affects you and you're feeling it. But it's really lovely to sit next to my sister who enjoys baking and be like, that sounds so fun. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And just enjoying her enthusiasm.
Enjoy doing things that we normally don't do, and for positive things, right?
Absolutely.
Aimee, it's been so great to have you in the studio today. What a fabulous conversation. Everybody, thank you for joining us this morning here on Raise the Vibe. I hope you also enjoyed our discussion today. This is Voice of Vashon, KVSH 101.9 FM. Have a great day, everyone, and remember to go out there and raise the vibe. Goodbye, everyone. Yay! Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Aimee Cartier in the studio today. Aimee, is there anything that you want to say while you're here about upcoming events or anything that you have going on?
Yeah, just I would mention again the May 19th thing that I have going on just for empaths. It's Empath Tools, a whole day of everything that you need to know to dial your empathic ability. And it's going to be virtually, so you can, it'll be via Zoom video. We'll be connected. We'll be together in the room, only you'll be wherever you are in the world, and I'll be in my studio at home on Vashon Island.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.